What if I told you that one of the largest countries on Earth was once a collection of scattered tribes ruled by Viking princes, then transformed into a vast empire that stretched from Europe to Alaska, survived Napoleon, Hitler, and the collapse of communism, and today stands as one of the most powerful and controversial nations on the planet? This is the complete, unbroken story of Russia, a land of unimaginable extremes, brilliant leaders, ruthless tyrants, epic suffering, and unbreakable resilience. From the icy winters that defeated the greatest armies in history, to the golden domes of the Kremlin, from the iron rule of the Tsars to the iron fist of Vladimir Putin, Russia's history is one of the most dramatic and consequential in human civilization. If you're an American watching this right now, understanding Russia is not just about the past. It is about understanding a rival superpower that has shaped and continues to shape the world you live in. So sit back, because you're about to experience the entire history of Russia. This is going to be epic. The birth of Russia. From Vikings to Kievan Rus. The story of Russia begins not with Slavic tribes, but with Vikings. In the 9th century, Scandinavian warriors and traders known as the Varangians sailed down the rivers of Eastern Europe. According to legend, the Slavic tribes, tired of constant fighting, invited a Viking prince named Rurik to come and rule them. Whether the story is entirely true or not, the Rurikid dynasty that followed would found the first Russian state. By 882, Rurik's successor Oleg had established the powerful state known as Kievan Rus, with its capital in Kiev, modern Kiev. For the next several centuries, Kievan Rus was one of the most advanced and prosperous states in Europe. It traded with Byzantium, adopted Orthodox Christianity in 988 under Prince Vladimir the Great, and built stunning cathedrals that still stand today. But like so many early medieval states, Kievan Rus is eventually fractured. Internal rivalries and the devastating Mongol invasion in the 13th century brought it to its knees. The Mongols, or Tatars, as the Russians called them, ruled much of Russia for over 200 years through a system of tribute and indirect control. This period, known as the Mongol yoke, left deep scars on the Russian psyche, a lasting fear of invasion and a strong desire for centralized power. The rise of Muscovy and Ivan the Terrible. From the ashes of Kievan Rus rose the Principality of Moscow. Through clever diplomacy, strategic marriages, and sheer determination, the princes of Moscow gradually expanded their territory and influence. The turning point came in 1480 when Ivan III, known as Ivan the Great, finally shook off Mongol overlordship. He refused to pay tribute and stood firm against the Tatar forces. The standing on the Ugra River marked the end of the Mongol yoke. Ivan III also married a Byzantine princess and began styling himself as Tsar, claiming Moscow as the Third Rome, the true heir of Christian civilization after the fall of Constantinople. But it was his grandson, Ivan IV, better known as Ivan the Terrible, who truly transformed Russia into a formidable power. Crowned the first official Tsar in 1547, Ivan expanded Russian territory dramatically, conquering the Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan, opening the way for expansion into Siberia. Ivan was a man of extremes. He was highly intelligent, deeply religious, and a capable reformer in his early years. But paranoia and personal tragedy turned him into one of history's most infamous tyrants. He created the Oprichnina, a state within a state run by his secret police, and unleashed waves of terror against the nobility. In a fit of rage, he even killed his own son. Despite his cruelty, Ivan laid the foundations for the Russian Empire. He established a standing army, centralized administration, and began the long process of turning Russia into a multi-ethnic empire. The time of troubles in the Romanov dynasty. After Ivan the Terrible's death, Russia descended into chaos. His weak son Fyodor died without heirs, triggering the time of troubles, 1598, 1613, a period of famine, pretenders, Polish invasion, and civil war. In 1613, a national assembly chose Michael Romanov as the new Tsar, founding the Romanov dynasty that would rule Russia for the next 300 years. The early Romanovs worked to rebuild the state, but it was under Peter the Great that Russia would undergo its most dramatic transformation. Peter the Great. Russia becomes a European power. Peter I, who ruled from 1682 to 1725, is one of the most extraordinary figures in Russian history. Standing nearly 6'8" tall, he was a giant in every sense. Obsessed with modernizing Russia, he traveled incognito to Western Europe, worked as a shipbuilder in the Netherlands, and returned home determined to drag Russia into the modern age, whether it wanted to go or not. Peter created a modern army and navy, built St. Claus Petersburg as a window to Europe, forced nobles to shave their beards and adopt Western clothing, and reformed the calendar, administration, and education. He defeated Sweden in the Great Northern War, gaining access to the Baltic Sea and establishing Russia as a major European power. His methods were brutal. He executed thousands of rebels, including his own son. But by the time he died, Russia was no longer a backward eastern state. It was a formidable empire. Catherine the Great, and the Golden Age of Empire. After a series of short reigns, Catherine II, a German princess who seized power in a coup, became one of Russia's greatest rulers. During her long reign, 1762-1796, Russia expanded enormously, annexing Crimea, much of Poland, and vast territories in the south and east. Catherine was an enlightened despot. She corresponded with Voltaire and Diderot, reformed administration, and promoted education and the arts. Under her rule, Russian culture flourished. But she also strengthened serfdom and crushed peasant rebellions, most famously Pugachev's rebellion. By the end of the 18th century, Russia was a true superpower, stretching from the Baltic to the Pacific. The 19th century, glory, reform, and revolution. The 19th century was a time of both triumph and tension. Russia defeated Napoleon in 1812. The French emperor's disastrous invasion became one of the greatest military catastrophes in history. The burning of Moscow and the brutal Russian winter destroyed the Grande Armée. But victory brought new problems. The Decembrist revolt in 1825 showed growing discontent among the educated elite. Tsar Alexander II finally abolished serfdom in 1861, but the reforms were incomplete and came too late for many. The late 19th century saw rapid industrialization, the rise of revolutionary movements, and growing tension with other European powers. Writers like Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Chekhov captured the soul of Russia during this turbulent time. The fall of the Tsars and the Soviet era. World War I was the beginning of the end for the Romanov dynasty. Millions of Russian soldiers died in a poorly managed war. Food shortages and unrest led to the February Revolution of 1917. Tsar Nicholas II abdicated, ending over 300 years of Romanov rule. The provisional government struggled to maintain control. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks under Vladimir Lenin seized power in the October Revolution. The Russian Civil War followed a brutal conflict that the Reds eventually won. Lenin's death in 1924 led to Joseph Stalin's rise. Under Stalin, the Soviet Union underwent forced industrialization, collectivization, and the Great Purge. Millions died in famines and the Gulag system. Yet the USSR also became a superpower, defeating Nazi Germany in World War II at enormous cost, over 20 million Soviet lives. After Stalin, the Soviet Union entered the Cold War. It achieved incredible feats like launching Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin into space, but also faced economic stagnation and repression, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the rise of Putin. In the 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms of perestroika and glasnost unintentionally accelerated the collapse of the Soviet system. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. Russia emerged as an independent nation under Boris Yeltsin. The 1990s were chaotic economic collapse, oligarchs, and instability. Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, became president in 2000. Under his rule, Russia stabilized economically, reasserted central control, and began projecting power once again from the annexation of Crimea in 2014 to its role in global conflicts. Today, Russia remains a nuclear superpower with vast resources, a proud historical identity, and complex relationships with the West. Russia's history is a story of survival against impossible odds, of leaders who reshaped the world, and of a people who have endured more than most nations could imagine. From the Tsars who built an empire to the modern challenges of the 21st century, Russia has always been a force that cannot be ignored.